Exchange, or the International Petroleum Exchange in London, in New York and London, respectively, where virtually 95% of the oil is traded. It will create a standard for Caspian crude, which will compete with Brent crude or Dubai crude or West Texas Intermediate crude. And the Bush administration and multinational oil sees this as much of a threat as the pipelines, particularly because the Iranians will demand rials or euros for payment and will drop the dollar, will not accept the U.S. dollar for payment for oil. And that if the Middle East goes to this standard where they'll demand euros and refuse dollars for oil, that this could potentially lead to the further collapse of the dollar. Do you agree?
Well, I think that's correct. And as a matter of fact, if you recall, Saddam Hussein did the exact same thing.
Yes.
He moved the pricing for Iraqi oil out of dollars. And I think at that point his days were clearly numbered. So now the Iranians are trying to do the same thing. You note enormous pressure in OPEC to move out of dollars, and that was one of the reasons Bush traveled over to Saudi Arabia and the other Gulf states recently to try to get them to toe the line and stay into dollars. So, yes, it is a serious threat.
Well, I'll tell you straight up, as a trader, they don't want dollars. They want to dump dollars. They're doing everything possible to dump dollars. They hold, probably more than $1 trillion worth of dollars, as China does. And both China and the Middle East see the dollar, it's enjoyed a little bit of a rally these last 2 weeks. But in the last 7 years, the dollar has fallen by more than half. They simply don't want dollar-denominated investments. Let's get to we have a few questions from callers here. This is Community Radio, and we're here to serve our listeners. Let me refer to you a couple of questions our caller asked. One caller asked, where does Israel get its oil? Who sells to them with so many enemies around?
I believe it has a oil agreement with Egypt left over from the resolution of the 67 war, and it gets oil there. As you know, it used to get a lot of oil from Iran under the Shah. One of the pipelines that is being constructed now will go down from Turkey into Israel, and then they want to further transship oil down to their port of Eilat for exportation to Asia.
All right, we have a few more questions here. You ready for a couple of quickies?
Sure.
All right. Another question is there an alternative to an open-ended global war, what the Pentagon calls a long war? In other words, this war on terror seems like, as McCain said, could go on for another 100 years. Is there an alternative to open-ended global war, or what the Pentagon calls the long war?
Certainly. I'm a political independent, but I think Congressman Ron Paul, during his campaign for the presidency, made several cogent speeches on this point, just saying we should be dissolving our empire and our military bases, bringing our troops home, protecting our country, which, of course, is our right and our obligation. That, I think, is the alternative. That's not isolationism. I think it's a very smart preemptive move, because right now we're in what Professor Kennedy has pointed out as imperial overstretch. Our empire is going to collapse. It's simply a question of time. As you pointed out, the dollar is worthless. It's going down into the grave. We simply don't have the money to be financing this. Look around you here in the United States. The destruction of our economy and good-paying jobs for Americans. This goes back starting with the Reagan administration and these University of Chicago Friedmanite market economics. Basically the Nazi philosophy of useless eaters that was condemned at Nuremberg. And I should note here that many of Obama's top economic advisors come from the University of Chicago. So we're simply going to see more of the same from either side. So, yeah, I think there is an alternative. I think Congressman Paul, during his campaign, did try to sketch out that alternative, and I'd encourage you to have a look at it. Or you could read the trilogy of books by Professor Chalmers Johnson on the American Empire, and his recommendation is pretty much the same, except he believes we've passed the point of imperial overstretch, and there's not much that can be done about it. I think we still have some time, but the collapse is coming.
Collapse is coming, and I think it's inevitable. You used the word empire several times. Michael Clare used the word empire several times. We spoke with Professor Falk at Princeton. He used the word empire several times. This was in another call. The empire reminds me of the Roman Empire. Couldn't afford, after a while, could not afford to keep a standing army in the far reaches of its empire. Ultimately, that cost led to the collapse of the Roman Empire. I mean, is that just a little anecdotal story from history, or does it have a real implication